Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over Donny Crates Thor, where we pick up with Volume 3. Now, Volume 3 is really more of I say, let's calm everything down. Because honestly, ever since issue number 1, Thor has gone through a lot with the Black Winter, Galactus, Donald Blake. So many different things are happening right now that you do need a story every once in a while to calm everything down, but at the same time kind of build up what's to come down the road for our good old hero Thor. But when we pick up with Thor, he's depressed, he's sad. And the reason why, because this man has gone through a lot. The Black Winter showed him a future where he dies by the hands of Thanos. But on top of that, he had to deal with Donald Blake as well. And Donald Blake almost locked him away forever. And on top of that, his hammer is beginning to not work for him. He's beginning the process of being unable to lift the hammer. And so it seems he's beginning to become unworthy for his hammer. He also feels like he's a horrible king. He is not living up to what his father was, or the one before his father. And so he believes that he is a failure. And so while you have everybody just celebrating, drinking, having a good time because they were all able to work together to stop Donald Blake, Thor says, "Why are you celebrating? Why?" Now again, no one knows about the future he saw, where he died by the hands of Thanos. No one else knows except him and the Black Winter. And so this is Thor saying they should not celebrate because they have no idea what is about to come down the road. That I'm going to die and I'm going to be a failure as a king for Asgard. But after that outburst, you didn't have Thor go to his room. Now, when he does go to his room, he does see his hammer. And this is him saying, how bad has it gotten? Because throughout the run of Donny Crates, each story is getting harder and harder for him to be able to lift the hammer up. And so it's him saying, how bad has it gotten now? And now, it's gotten so bad that he is unable to lift the hammer. But on top of that, the hammer begins to attack him like it has a mind of its own, to the point where it basically traps Thor on the ground and is saying, you are no longer worthy to pick me up, or you are no longer worthy to move me. And so unfortunately, you must wait until somebody worthy is able to move me to free you off the ground. Now, luckily, that person is Loki, because we saw earlier, I think Volume 1, Loki was able to lift the hammer up. And so with that being said, he is able to free Thor. Now, right after he does that, you have Thor say, I'll be right back. And you have Loki wonder, where in the world are you going? And you have Thor saying, I'm going to Midgard to meet with a certain person who could help me understand what in the world is going on with me and my hammer. And so when he does arrive in Midgard, Earth, he does see the Avengers fighting against an army of robot monsters. Now, when it comes to these monsters, they're not that important for this storyline. It's just the Avengers doing some Avengers stuff. Either way, you do have Thor appear, and once Thor does appear, he does help the Avengers deal with this problem, because he came here to talk to one particular person, and that would be Steve Rogers, Captain America, because he feels like Steve could possibly help him work through his problem when it comes to his hammer. But this is a Thor who did not come to Earth for pleasure. He didn't come to Earth to hang out with friends. He came to Earth for business, to figure out what in the world is going on with his hammer. And he's hoping that Steve Rogers can help him work through it. Now, here's the thing, because he is so focused on his mission right now, when you have Iron Man try his best to crack a joke with Thor, Thor shows Iron Man that he is not here to have fun. He's here for business. And so he continues to walk closer to Steve Rogers. Except once he's able to get close to Steve Rogers, well, that is when you have the hammer begin to go crazy again. to the point where the hammer actually attacks Steve Rogers. Now, luckily for Steve, he was able to use his shield as a way to protect him. But you have Steve very confused on what in the world just happened. Because right now, to the Avengers, it looks like Thor is unable to control his hammer. And so Steve realized how important this conversation they're about to have could actually be. And so when it comes to Steve Rogers and Thor's conversation, you have Thor ask Steve one question right off the bat. He said, "Hey, Cap, when was the last time you and I saw one another?" Now, this is a very good question to ask, because right now it's Steve saying, well, the last time I saw you, you and I worked together to fight against Null. We also dealt with the Phoenix problem as well. So I have to say, very recently. But you have Thor say, yeah, here's the thing. I do not remember at all. And what he is saying is that because he's been alive for so long, his entire life is beginning to blur together. And so unfortunately, he is beginning to forget different things. Now, this leads into the actual conversation about the hammer. And you have Thor say, I am no longer worthy for my hammer. Now, the reason why he is saying that because when Odin made the hammer, he made the hammer to be used by Thor as a way to protect Asgard on the front lines. But Thor was a warrior back then, not a king. And so right now, he is a king. And so what Steve and Thor is saying that when it comes to the hammer, is Thor right now have to prove that he's worthy, but not as a warrior, but as a king. And so that is very important, because let's not forget, Thor feels like he is a failure so far as king of Asgard, as the Allfather of Asgard. And so he says, I'm going to leave my hammer here in Avengers' home while I try to figure out how to prove the hammer that I am a worthy king, that I am a great king. And so you have Thor literally leave his hammer in the home of the Avengers. And so as we jump into the next chapter, well, we are able to explore more of the nightmare that Thor has been having every single night, where you have Thanos being the one killing off Thor with his own hammer, but also with the Infinity Stones. And so in this nightmare, it's just Thanos just wrecking Thor. But you also have Thor beg to say, please do not do this. Please stop. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And you have Thanos say, gods do not beg. Kings do not beg. And basically right now, you are begging. When I last checked, I thought that you were a king. And you have Thanos give Thor one last single blow. But we come to find out that he is actually telling this nightmare to Jane Foster. Now remember, Jane Foster was a lover for Thor for a very long time. Now over time, she also became a Thor as well, when Thor was no longer worthy for his hammer. But on top of that, after she was Thor, she became a Valkyrie. Either way, these two characters, they still have a very close bond with one another, even though they're no longer in love with one another. Either way, it's her realizing that Thor is having some messed up nightmares, which honestly, she is right. This man having the same nightmare over and over again when he sleeps, with the idea that he sees Thanos just killing him left and right with his own hammer, but also with the Infinity Stones. And so she's wondering, hey, what is really going on with you? Now, before we are able to kind of dive deeper into her question, well, that is the moment she flies away. She turns into Valkyrie because something else is happening right now in New York City. And what she has to handle is actually the Wrecking Crew. And the Wrecking Crew used to be one of those classic Thor bad guys where they'll give Thor a challenge and Thor will be able to stop them, and the story goes on. But by this point in Marvel Comics, the Wrecking Crew is not really a huge threat for Thor, especially now with Valkyrie and Thor both being there together. And so when she does arrive, it is hilarious, because at first they're like, okay, maybe we can defeat her if we just work together. And you have Valkyrie like, nah, bro, listen, y'all gone ahead and messed up now. There is no way y'all think y'all going to win. And they try, but then you have Thor step in. And once Thor and Valkyrie is able to take down one member of the wrecking crew, the other two realize they have messed up and say, you know what? Let's go ahead and get out of here. Yeah, let's go ahead and leave. And they run away. After that, you then have Jane Foster say, okay, now it's time for us to get back on track and continue our conversation we were having about your nightmare. And so what she says is that when it comes to Thor, Thor is not acting like himself. And what she means by that is usually Thor is a character who does not hide. He's not scared. When he has a problem, he faced that problem head on. And so she's wondering what has truly changed for Thor. We already know though, it was the Black Winter. The Black Winter had literally scared Thor to death because now he knows that sooner or later Thanos is coming. And when he does, everybody dies around Thor, including Thor as well. And so even though she's saying face your problems, this is a man who has the right to be scared. Now after that, Thor has to leave. And the reason why, because his ravens have appeared and they have told him, hey, by the way, your mother wants to meet you right now. And so he goes and teleports over to where his mother could be at. Except when he does arrive, well, he is confronted by Odin. And let's not forget, even though Odin helped out in the last story, these two characters right now are still at odds with one another. And so you have Thor saying, let me get this straight. The ravens told me that Freya, my mother, was looking for me. Instead, it was you. So you used the name of my mother as a way to trick me over here to do what? Bond with you? Have a conversation with you? I do not want to talk to you unless I'm ready to talk to you. Except right when he says that, well, that is the moment you have a bunch of creatures pop out of nowhere and begin to attack Thor and Odin. Now, luckily for them, they are saved by two women, Freya and Angela, because let's not forget, Angela in comics is the sister to Thor, not Hela like in the movies. Because we learned a while back that when it came to Odin, he did have another child. And that child was, of course, Angela, and she comes from the 10th realm, heaven. Either way right now, it seems like her and Freya are here together to talk to Odin and also Thor. Now, something else to mention is that when it comes to Odin and Freya, they got divorced, or they are separated, because after Thor became the Allfather, these two guys went on an adventure with one another, and apparently their love fell apart. But apparently the two ladies realized that Odin and Thor have to work together. Now, before they are able to kind of explain what they mean by that, you do have more creatures appear to attack all of them. And so you do have our heroes work together to fight against these creatures. Now, while you have our heroes working together, you then have Freya return and give herself a new title. And she now calls herself the Goddess of the Hunt. Now, the reason why she is doing that because originally she was the goddess of marriage. But unfortunately, her and Odin, well, got divorced, or they are separated. And so they're no longer married. And she felt like it was the right time to go ahead and take over a new title, the Goddess of the Hunt. Now, while you have our heroes being able to get rid of these creatures, you didn't have Angela and Freya say, it's about time for us to talk, because we realize there is something wrong happening across the 10 realms. But of course, it involves you two guys, Odin and Thor. And what she is trying to say is that right now, with Odin and Thor not getting along and not trying to work together, this could cause a whole lot more problems down the road. Now, what they mean by that is they have been watching Thor, and they realize that ever since Thor became the Allfather of Asgard, unfortunately, he has not been a great king. And it seems like right now, he is going through a lot, mentally and physically. And they are talking about the Black Winter, Galactus, Donald Blake. And so right now they're saying you have gone through so much in a short period of time as the king of Asgard. But the problem is though, you have to get along with your father, because if you don't, a divided house is going to be the end of everything. We need both of you guys to actually work together. The problem is Odin and Thor are not listening because they're both headstrong. And so with them both being headstrong, they're like, listen, it's his fault. No, it's his fault. But in reality, it's both their faults, because right now, a lot of different problems that has been happening across Asgard in the other 9 realms is because of Odin especially, but also Thor. But really more of Odin, because remember, in our last video, we realized that everything Odin had made when he was the Allfather is coming apart, like Donald Blake, because now Thor is the Allfather of Asgard. But at the same time, Thor is not being a great king when it comes to being the Allfather of Asgard. Either way, you have Freya say, hey Angela, take your father away, so that Thor and I are able to have a conversation with one another. Now let's not forget that Freya is not the biological mother of Thor. Matter of fact, it's someone else completely. But because she was there to raise Thor up, they are technically mother and son. They have a very close bond with one another. But with that being said though, right now you have Freya say, I have been watching you. And I have realized that you are going through a lot at the moment, but at the same time, there is something on your mind. And she's right, there is. Now, really, there are a lot of different things on his mind, but the one thing that's on his mind the most is the idea of Thanos coming through and killing him off and other members of the Avengers and probably Asgardians as well, where Thanos wins. Either way, she's saying, I realize that you are going through a lot and something is on your mind. And she's trying to figure out what is wrong with her son. What is wrong with him mentally? And let's not forget, one more time, not everybody knows about what the Black Winter has shown. And so when it comes to Thor, when his mom says, hey, everything is going to be okay, why are you sad? What is on your mind? He says, I'm afraid about the idea that I will not be able to have children to actually raise, to show them the way of how to be a great warrior and a future king. Now, when it comes to Freya, she's saying, what do you mean by that? Because you'll have the ability to be a father, to have children. What are you talking about? But at the same time, again, Thor is not telling her what he saw when it came to the Black Winter. And so because of that, he's all like, no, because I'm going to die and lose that chance to be a father, but also be a husband as well. But to go ahead and wrap up today's video, you didn't have Thor get a call from the Avengers. And right now you have the Avengers telling Thor some bad news, because let's not forget, he left his hammer back with the Avengers on Earth. But they're calling him right now to say, hey, your hammer just disappeared. And this is the ending of today's comic book video. So with that being said, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.